What is up, everybody? This is Recap Rewind. I'm JLAG, and this episode is recapping, reviewing Riverdale Season 6, Episode 6, and it's called Chapter 102, Death at a Funeral. This week, NB is out on vacation, but joining me this episode, she no longer needs an introduction, our friend Macy, aka No Context Riverdale. Welcome back to Recap Rewind.
I'm so happy to be back.
Thanks for coming.
And of course.
Don't forget to stay tuned to the very end for our recap roundups, our MVPs, our LVPs, our best moments, WTF moments, and best lines. So make sure you are sticking around for that. As always, to our listeners and our brand new ones, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into this episode, Macy. Let's do this. So before we get into like the nitty gritty, what were your general thoughts on the episode?
So I've learned to just roll with the punches with Riverdale.
Yeah.
Especially after, last week with the premiere. Totally took Riverdale in another direction, which I didn't think there was another direction to go in.
Yeah.
I feel like they've done everything.
Exactly.
Clearly not.
No.
I really liked this episode, and I actually liked this one more than last week's.
For sure.
So feel like there was a lot more like interesting stuff going on this week.
Totally. I agree with you 100%. It was definitely better than last week's episode. Just because I think last episode there were too many things happening. Like we got all the new stuff happening, the superpowers, the magic, and like the possession. And this episode,
a lot at once.
It was a lot at once, a little too much. And this episode, I feel, leveled us out a bit, quite a bit actually. And we got. I wasn't mad or annoyed by how the story is now playing out.
Right.
And it almost in a way I was like, okay, I see that. Like let's keep this moving. I'm jumping in. Let's go in and let's just do this. I was actually surprised myself how much I enjoyed the episode just because there were so many new elements, like you were saying. Like we just got thrown so many last episode. So this episode, I was worried that it was going to make me feel like, this is not the direction I wanted Riverdale to go. But it's got its own Riverdale flavor, and I'm kind of into it.
For sure.
So I'm excited to talk to you about all of it.
And I think last week too, I think we were still thinking of how Riverdale ended. So we're like, oh no, what happened at the end of season 5 that we're supposed to be keeping up with for Riverdale?
Yes.
So there was a lot of confusion there for me too.
Yeah, I agree. I know that jump in between those 6-7 episodes that we got in the beginning of this season definitely like confused me. And I was like, when's the last time we saw Hiram? What were they about to do to him? It was like a whole season ago, or at least half a season ago, right?
Yeah, so you have to like remember that those things didn't happen in Riverdale. Exactly. So you kind of have to forget that.
Yeah. But I'm sure you noticed it as well, and I think it happens again this episode, but a lot of the things that happened in Riverdale are kind of mirroring in their own way in the real world. So like this one, I think the big one was like Glenn dying, where in Riverdale he was killed by Betty, but in this one he was killed by the TBK.
I did notice that. It's like in its own Riverdale way, these things are still happening.
Yeah. So it's really interesting that way. But let's get right into it. The first scene we see is Jughead is back to his kind of monologue starting the episode. And he's talking about losing his hearing, and he's really, really upset about this kind of new world that he has to now adapt to. And then it cuts to Archie, and he hired his whole crew to help set up his house and fix it up. We got Uncle Frank and Betty and a bunch of other people that he hired to help with fixing the house. And really quickly cuts to, I think the first dialogue piece that we get is a cute little scene with Barchie. A cute little, and by cute I mean Betty is trying to crush his hand in a
vice. I put in my notes, cute Barchie moment trying to hurt Archie. And I can't imagine anybody who doesn't watch the show reading that and be like, sorry, what?
Yeah, exactly.
But it makes
Exactly.
total sense to us, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm sitting there being like, "Oh, she's literally just trying to crush his hand," but it's kind of
Yeah.
cute. Like I'm watching it being
It
like,
was
"This
a
is
really cute,
adorable."
like, just casual relationship moment.
Yeah,
Well, casual as in Riverdale casual.
for sure, for
You know, they
sure.
got superpowers now.
So speaking of which, that's what Archie kind of says. He's like, "I guess I'm a superhero now," and he's really excited about it. Like it's kind of Archie's like dream come true, becoming this
Mhm.
superhero with superpowers. And then they start talking about whether or not either of them have reached out to Jughead. And Betty says, I tried to reach out to him. He hasn't really answered any of my messages. And Archie says, I'll check in with him later. It's interesting because, when we look at Riverdale where we're at now versus, years ago when this first started, how tight
Mhm.
knit they are. And I think this episode, um, and a few other things happen this episode really show that like that core four that we all like grew and love, like grew to love,
Mhm.
is very separate. Like, Barchie's doing their own thing, Jughead's really doing his own thing, and Veronica's very much so, like on her
Yeah.
own tip. So it's interesting to
They've got
see.
their own, like, storylines. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So then it cuts to Thornhill, and Britta comes downstairs and talks to Nana about Cheryl. She's like, something's off with Cheryl. And right off the top, she says Cheryl's soul is now untethered and into like, it's disappeared into the nothingness, and all that
Mhm.
remains is Abigail because I put together this spell. And now she's embodying Cheryl's body. Um, One thing I will say really quickly before we get into it is I was really happy that they weren't kind of pussyfooting around the mystery of whether or not Abigail was like that answer was answered by Nana. Like
Mhm.
she wasn't pretending. She wasn't lying to anybody at this point.
Yeah.
She was like, Britta, this is the tea.
Yeah.
Cheryl's gone and now it's just Abigail. What did you think of how that kind of was just like done?
Well, I had never seen Nana Rose so lively. Like, in the
Yeah.
past seasons, like, this one, she is just, like, I don't know, it's just so funny to see her have more dialogue and, like, part
Yeah.
of the storyline. Um, I do love that we're getting to see Abigail and just see how she interacts in Riverdale in modern times. It's so funny because I feel like nobody is gonna know that Cheryl is being inhabited by an 1800s witch because they literally talk the same.
I know.
Like, they literally have the same dialogue.
I saw that tweet, and I think you either liked it or
Yes.
I was like, "This is the truest thing," and it's so so funny
They
because
have the same vocabulary.
yeah, you would never know. You really would never
No.
know because she sounds, and it's funny because Tony even says she's like she doesn't really sound like herself, and
Yeah.
I'm like, doesn't she though? Like
Yeah.
she sounds pretty close to what she used to sound like. So yeah,
Um,
so Abigail goes
mhm.
downstairs, and we kind of find out what Nana's big plan is, which is essentially she wants to take back Riverdale. Like she wants the former glory days of the Blossoms kind of ruling the town, and that's why she like that was her main purpose of bringing Abigail back. And Abigail seems like she's kind of down for it, and they say that they
Mhm.
want to start with the council. So the Council of Four. So that's Tabitha, Alice. Who else is on there?
Frank
Frank
and
and
Tony.
Tony. Right. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. Um, and then it cuts to Jughead again talking to Archie or trying to talk to Archie,
Mhm.
and Archie's having to use cue cards to write and kind of asking questions. And in this moment, we find that Archie's asking if he noticed anything weird that happened since the explosion, aka asking if he's kind of triggered any superpowers.
Right.
And Jughead's like, outside of me going completely deaf, like, no. So
Right.
thanks for reminding me.
They really need to invest in a dry erase board. That is a lot of paper.
Thank you so much for saying that. I was watching with my husband yesterday, and he literally was like, who, like, there was no one who would just be like writing all
I
these
totally
notes.
get in true Riverdale fashion, old school, but
Old
come
school.
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tabitha, please get a dry erase board.
Yeah, that's like, come on, save the environment a little bit. Like
Yes.
we don't need those props right now. Uh,
No.
uh, that's so funny that you mentioned that. Um, so then we get a cut to Veronica, telling Reggie the bad news that her dad's body has been found, and you know he was tied up and then he was burnt. Um, the first question that I have before we keep talking about this scene is, do you think that that's sus? Like, let's get it out of the way. Is it sus that his body was burnt?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you think so?
Absolutely. When
Okay.
Reggie said, like, are you sure it's not just,
The
fake
fake
or
out,
whatever?
yeah.
I was like, if we don't see a body, I don't trust. I mean, I know last
Yeah.
season I definitely said that about Polly and we never saw it. That's a totally different thing. She's
Right.
not evil, so it's like this is a
Right.
whole different thing. He was burned. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I don't believe it.
And then that's the thing. I feel like I would have believed it up until the point that they said his body was burnt, essentially.
Hmm.
I would have said, okay, they tied him up, they put him in a shallow grave, and, Anatole sent the picture, and then that was
Right.
it. But the fact that she added that little extra element to the fact that the body was
Hmm.
burnt, I was like,
Because
I,
if they wouldn't have said that, we would have assumed he was in the casket at the
right.
funeral.
Yeah,
So now we
exactly.
know that was just kind of there,
Yeah,
and he obviously was burned, which,
burned
yeah, I
beyond
don't believe it.
recognition. I
Nope.
yeah, I just yeah, I was talking and in the last podcast NB was like in full denial that that was going to be the case, and I was more on the lines of I don't know. I feel like this is kind of it for Hiram. Like when I think about his story, his trajectory, what he's done, like how Riverdale, the story has kind of used his character. I don't know if
Hmm.
there's much more that I would want for him to come back to. So that part of me is also feeling
Hmm.
like even with knowing that there was that burnt sus situation, I still think
Yeah.
even the way the story kind of ended with, the voice note and all that stuff, I'm like, I think we're supposed to feel like he's actually 100% dead, but
Right.
you never know. It's true, you really
You
never
don't.
know. It's
No.
hard to really say
No,
100%.
you really don't.
Yeah, it's true. So Reggie in this moment, he gets really mad at Veronica because just last episode she lied to him and he's like, "Why did you lie to me?" And she says like, "I didn't want to be judged by you. It was a hard moment for me." And she just goes on to say, "You just got to suck it up because I'm going to plan a memorial for my dad at the casino and my abuelita's coming, my mom's planning to come, like everybody's showing up, so like you got to like keep it on the quiet right now."
Yeah.
And he kind of goes back to say like, should I say sorry for your loss or should I say congratulations?
I loved that part.
Yeah. And Veronica's like, honestly, I don't know what you want, like what to say at this point. I feel like she's having a lot of conflicting feelings about the fact that she killed her dad.
For sure. Yeah.
So then it cuts to Pop's diner, and Kevin he's talking to his dad, and he has baby Anthony beside him, and he decides that he wants to become a deputy for his dad. And his dad's like, if that's what you want, we'll do that. And he was super excited about it. Um, but my question was, why would becoming a deputy help with protecting baby Anthony in a
Who's
situation
gonna
where,
watch him
yeah, like you're
now?
just, yeah, you're like, you added another job. Like, are you not still working at the school? Like, what's going on? Like,
Oh, right.
yeah,
Is he
so I'm
still
just
a
like,
teacher?
yeah, like if you need to be taking care
Oh,
of this baby, like what's
I
happening?
do remember last season he did say he didn't want to be a teacher anymore.
Oh, so we just assume that he
Um,
like decided to
I
leave Riverdale.
I guess
Bye.
so.
Okay.
Um, Also, I'm so tired of them saying baby Anthony. We know he's a baby now.
Yeah.
We get it at this point.
Baby Anthony, baby Anthony, baby Anthony. It's like Bloody
Just
Mary
call
at
him
this point.
Anthony.
Yeah. So yeah, I was kind of confused as to why he's deputy. It doesn't play into this episode at all, so I'm just like,
No.
where they once again Kevin is like just like Cheryl's soul. in the nothingness, in the
doing its
ether,
own thing.
doing its own thing. Exactly. So then it cuts to the Andrews house. Hashtag Doritos sponsorship. Like we get that shot where he's just eating the bag of chips.
Love it. Adding it to my
Yeah.
folder of all the chip
Yeah. You need to do like a
brands.
full montage now of all the different
I
chips
thought
from
about it. I thought about it.
it. And Betty gets a call that Glenn has gone MIA. She like, they don't know where he is. He was supposed to leave and then he never returned or they never heard from him again. So now she thinks something's up.
Mhm.
Cuts to the casino and her abuelita shows up. Veronica's abuelita shows up and she starts talking to her. And we are introduced to a new character, her godson, Geraldo,
Mhm.
um, who plays quite a big part in this episode. But what were your first impressions of him?
I don't trust him.
Yeah.
There's something going on, and I think he might work for Hiram.
Ooh, that just
Yeah.
gives me chills. That
I
is a
I mean,
good theory.
who knows with Riverdale, but I feel like them introducing him, he's gonna continue to be in future episodes. Like
Right.
just something gave me that feeling.
Something. Yeah, that's a really good take. Now that as we go through the notes, I want to keep that in mind as
Yeah.
we go through because there are some things that you could think are a little bit more suspicious if you know that he's working
Mhm.
for Hiram or even for Abuelita. Like at this point, I don't know what
Right?
Abuelita's game is, but it might not be like 100%, like
She was a
honest.
little like not very like upset. I mean, I know
Yeah.
she kind of expected it, but I she wasn't even crying. Like it was just like
Yeah.
interesting.
And with that in mind, she does ask in the scene if Veronica could do the eulogy. And a part of me is almost like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, is she just doing it to kind of like test her or like rub it in her face a little bit that like, I
Yeah.
know what you did and you're not going to get away with it? Like, it's now I'm very
Yeah.
interested in that storyline. See,
That
this
would
is
be
why we have you on the
crazy.
pod. This is
Yeah.
why, because we need the different theories. Um, so then it cuts to Jughead talking to Tabitha, and she's trying to help once again using the one note card for every sentence.
Yeah.
She just wants to know how she can help, and he basically says there's nothing that she can really do right now for him. But she's earnestly trying. Like poor Tabitha, she was such a great character. She's still such a great character, but like this
Mhm.
episode, it just showed how much heart she has as a person. And yeah, I love her for sticking by Jughead through all of this.
I do too.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say are like, "Oh, they seem like friends." And it's like, "No, she's just being there for him. She's being like so supportive, like how
Yeah,
you should be in a relationship." Like
exactly.
I love them together,
Me too.
honestly.
Me too.
They're so sweet.
They're such a sweet couple for sure. So then it cuts to Betty at the FBI office, and she's looking through some of the pictures. Um, and she starts to have a really bad migraine. She's like, "Ugh, my head." Her, one of her coworkers comes by, checks in on her, and she drops off a little box and says, "Oh, this came for you." When she opens it, it's a box with a foot in it, which is
Wh-
probably is it the second or third time that Betty's been sent a body part from a murderer?
I the last time I can remember was
The finger.
yes,
That's
the
that's what I
finger, the
remember.
Christmas episode. So
Yeah.
I think it's the second time.
All right.
But I definitely kept thinking like, "What's in the box?" Like, was that like a
Open
nod
it.
to that too
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For
from
sure.
Seven?
Yeah. Open the box. Yeah. Um so it's obviously Glenn's foot. She's kind of freaking out about it. Cuts to the council meeting, and as they're going through the orders of business, Veronica stands up and lets everyone know that her dad is dead. The reactions are varied. Some are shocked, some are
Mhm.
no one's clapping, but everyone's kind of just like, oh, 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 oh. And then she just sits down, and that was kind of the end of like no
Yeah.
one. They were like moving on to the next point, and I was like, oh, okay. Like we're just
What
gonna.
I thought that was kind of interesting in a way that she announced Hiram was dead, and then immediately the new Hiram stands up and like talks.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of like maybe what they were doing with
Kind of like
that.
a
It's
handoff in a way.
right,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
So yeah, as you mentioned, Percival Pickens stands up right after that is said, and he says he just moved to Riverdale, and we find out a little bit of history of the Pickens family and the fact that they have a connection to the Blossom family. Because Abigail recognizes him in the crowd, or the name Pickens,
Hmm.
and then Nana kind of whispers and says, like, yeah, we did have a bit of a relationship with them, but it didn't go so well. Like, it went pretty sour. Um, so I'm interested to see how that's going to play, obviously, how that's going to play out. Um, he does say something before he gets cut off that I have a question for you. Maybe you have a theory. He says, I have all these great ideas about the town and what I want to do with it. First thing I would like we should remove, and then he gets cut off. What do you think he was like about to say?
I think that I saw a synopsis for a future episode. Maybe I dreamed this, not 100% sure. But I'm pretty sure that he wants to get rid of the serpents. Like
Oh,
he wants to get rid of the gangs in town.
got it. Got
I
it.
think I think that's what it is. Especially like when he says remove and then Tony comes in and says, "Sorry, I was dealing with a gang matter." I think that
Yeah,
was also hinting to that.
that's interesting.
So,
So that might play into a potential feud then with the
mhm.
Blossoms, because Abigail wants to protect Tony, right? Or what do you think
Right.
is gonna? Yeah,
Yeah, I think definitely that because it seems like Cheryl's well, not Cheryl, Abigail.
Abigail.
Um her she wanted to help Nana to begin with, but then when she saw Tony, I think what she wants to do in Cheryl's body is like has changed now. She wants to focus specifically on Tony and that's it. So
Right.
I think that's also going to go with like the feud with Nana and Abigail because she doesn't want to do what Nana Rose wants anymore.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. So yes, this is the moment where Tony comes in, and that's when Abigail's like, "Oh, that's my Thomasina. That's like her."
mhm.
Um, and Britta kind of like whispers in her ear. She's like, "Yeah, that's Tony Topaz." And Abigail's like, "This is my girl. Like, let's go."
Mhm.
So then it cuts to Jughead at home, and he's trying to write, and he's trying to focus himself, but he just can't. And he kind of like, the camera pans over, and he wants to go for a motorcycle ride. So that scene is just like, it kind of just cuts,
Mhm.
and then it cuts to Archie and Veronica talking at the end, I guess at the end of the council meeting, just kind of having a little conversation. And he says like, sorry, how are you doing? And she's like, I'm doing okay. um and they talk about how they, it was only a short period of time that they wanted to do something similar to Hiram. um
Right.
but Archie goes on to say they probably wouldn't have gone through with it, so like it's just kind of a sad situation. What
Mhm.
do you think the significance is of that conversation, outside of the fact that I think that there was a I think maybe even RAS had said that that was actually going to be played out, and they were going to show him get killed in the woods, apparently, but they ended
Oh,
up not
wow.
not putting that in the writing, or not shooting it at all.
Interesting.
But what did you think of that, of the significance, outside of the fact that, the Varchies of the fandom were like, a crumb? Like, what did you think
I
it
know.
was?
Well, okay, so I'm a Barchie, but I will say that was a sweet like Barchie check-in moment for just,
Totally.
their friends still like just showing that they're still connected. Kind of like earlier when Betty was like, I've texted Jughead a couple of times. They're like showing that they're still checking in on each other.
Right.
So I liked that. But also I had no idea that they were going to film that. Um,
Yeah, I think it was NB who told me that that was one of the intentions, that he had mentioned, that they were gonna actually, that was gonna be one of his demises, and then they ended up changing it
right.
to
So
him getting banished.
interesting.
Yeah.
I guess that means that maybe they changed it so that they could go the route where it's the fake out,
Where
you
it's the
know?
fake, and that's the only thing that I can think of is like that would be the only reason why you wouldn't go that far, because if they do kill him, then
Right.
it's like the definitive end.
If we see it, it happened.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, so yeah, cute little Varchie check-in for sure. Then it cuts to Abigail talking to Britta at home, and she wants like all the information she can get from about Tony and like who she is, like what she does, and yeah, she wants to definitely pursue this woman. Then it cuts to Betty and Archie talking in her bedroom. And this is after she finds the foot, and she's
mhm,
talking to him, and she says, I'm pretty sure that Glenn could still be alive, because that's what the TBK does. He chops people up slowly and makes them suffer, and then he like, hacks them up and then sends different body parts until they're dead.
mhm,
Um, and Archie's worried about her, and she said, I don't think you should worry about me so much because I have like the aura power, but I'm more worried about like people like my mom and like other people in Riverdale, because he can be going after them as well. So
right.
they have to kind of devise what the next step is going to be outside of just kind of going after him somehow. So then it cuts to Jughead kind of having this really quick scene where it's like slow motion of, Tabitha like yelling at him, because it shows him kind of all scraped up, and then he says it in his like, monologue that he fell, he had an accident, he wiped out.
Mhm.
But it was like the one time that he felt like he was alive, like nothing was a problem anymore. Um,
But even as a Barchie, I hate that they keep doing the Jughead moments and then cutting to Barchie. Like Jughead's so sad, and then they're showing like Barchie with their superpowers and all this,
Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah. You're like, Jughead
oh
just can't catch a break. Like, really? He
no,
didn't need this.
no, he really didn't.
He really didn't need this. But yeah, I felt terrible for the fact that he's like kind of isolating once again into like a situation where, I mean,
Right,
thankfully, thank goodness he still has Tabitha. She hasn't been like peace.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
if she didn't have him, or if he didn't have her, then that would be a bad situation.
he would be back in the whatever it's called, the bunker.
Yeah, the bunker.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So then it cuts to Betty. She's back at the FBI office. She's telling everybody about the TBK. She's putting up posters and all this stuff. But the one thing that I didn't understand, and going back to wasting paper, she puts up these wanted signs of a guy with a trash bag on his head, as if the TBK was gonna go to Walmart and like wear a trash bag on his head, and people are
Right.
gonna be like, "It's him."
Right, like exactly what you said, like he's just gonna be walking around with a trash bag on, like, "Look at me, I'm the trash bag
Yeah,
killer."
yeah, exactly. So, all right. I mean, sure. Let's just keep it moving, I guess. So it cuts to Veronica, and she opens the door from at the Pembroke, and she kind of gets this guy in her face, a producer, who's like, sign this paper, and then she signs it, and then a whole camera crew comes in, and they set up a shot for like behind her, and that's when we get our introduction to our girl Hermione, who we haven't seen in a minute. But she comes in very, very dramatic. Ugh,
Very.
Veronica, like very, very dramatic. Were you happy to see Hermione back on the scene?
I was happy to see her, I loved her entrance, it was
Yeah.
great. Uh, I I do have some issues with,
How it all
the
plays out.
whole right, how
Yeah.
it all plays out, but I do still love her, and I think her and Veronica can mend their relationship,
Yeah, I have a lot of
possibly.
questions about her
Yeah.
situation, which we'll definitely talk
Mhm.
about in a minute. So then it cuts to Archie's place, and one of his workers finds a piece of palladium, and he hands it over to him. He's like, "Oh, I found this," and Archie's like, "Oh, awesome! This is the stuff that it's worth a lot of money. If you can find any more pieces, you can keep the next one." And the guy is like, sweet. And then he just kind of walks away. I didn't really think much of it at that point in
I didn't
time.
either.
I was like, okay, cool. He just holds on to like the piece that he's been given. And then it cuts to the next scene because everyone's taking a break. And it shows Archie because, Alice is going around giving everybody coffee. They pour like a super hot cup of coffee for him. And everyone's like, this is hot. This is hot.
Hmm.
And Archie's just out there like chugging the whole thing because he can't feel anything. And Frank kind of steps in and is like, yo, like, that's hot. Aren't you like freaking out right now? And then Archie realizes what he did and he's like, oh, yeah, it's super, super hot. So it happened it happened last episode. It happened again in this episode in this moment. Frank, they keep cutting back to Frank kind of keeping an eye and noticing something fishy with like this whole situation with Archie.
Right.
Number one, do you think that that's gonna come into play? And two, why do you think that they've kept this a secret from the rest of the adults in Riverdale? Like, why do you think that this is something that they need to keep under wraps?
So I definitely think that, like you said, like Frank noticing something weird last episode and
Yeah.
then uh, this week's episode, I definitely think he'll be like one of the first ones to figure out something's off. And I
Hmm.
think actually, maybe it's just like person who loves Frank and Alice in me that he's going to talk to Alice about it,
Yeah.
and they're going to like maybe figure something out and try to like see what's going on with them.
Right.
Um, but also, that's a good question. I really don't know why they're not telling, or maybe they're just waiting for them to get used to it and then tell. I don't know exactly.
Yeah. I
I
was
don't know.
trying to,
Superheroes don't tell, everyone about their superpowers. So
for
maybe they're
sure.
trying to keep it on the down low for those reasons.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I was like, but it's Frank, and it's like even Al. Like to your point, it's
Right.
Alice. Like who? What would they do? With
Right.
that information outside of like try to help figure it out with them. You know what I mean?
I think they'll be
Unless,
the first ones to find out, though,
yeah,
for sure.
unless it's just a writing thing and they just want to keep kind of like the adults like on their own. And I still, it's funny because I still see Archie and Betty as like kids, right? Especially when the
Hmm.
parents are around. So when you see these parent figures kind of around observing them and watching them, you're just like, okay, like engage, like talk to each other, like,
Right.
are you
Can we get
guys
some moments, where they're
exactly.
just like talking about these things?
Exactly. Like, are you guys having dinner together every night? Like, what's the deal?
Also, is Frank living with the in the Cooper house now? That's also just me wanting to know how Alice and Frank are doing.
Yeah. That's a really big question. And it's funny because the last thing I want is something like sprung up on us like halfway through the season
Yeah.
where they're like, oh, we're together now. Like, by the way, just letting you know?
Yeah, I definitely don't want that either. And
Yeah.
also, like, how Frank and Alice were in Riverdale, how much of that has transferred into
So
Riverdale?
true, right?
Because
Because they
they didn't
didn't.
have that moment in Riverdale.
Right.
So,
Right. That's a really good
like,
point.
definitely, I think that maybe we'll see Frank and Alice more when they're questioning what's going on with Betty and Archie.
Right.
So,
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Like that they'll bring them together to kind of like investigate together. Because you're right, they didn't have that moment yet, like where they went on a date or he kind of told her about his past, right? Like that was all in Riverdale.
right, right.
And if that is the case, how much of his past is true? Like we don't really know much more about Frank outside of that. So like do you think that we're going to get that story again in Riverdale, or do you think that we're just gonna assume that that was his history and we're gonna say like, okay, like that's why they can't be together? Like it's interesting that you mentioned
I
that.
I think maybe they might like I don't know, maybe like Frank and Alice have kind of started something and Alice mentions like I know you're like hesitant about this because of blah 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 and that's how they mention it
That's
again
how they
instead of
connect it.
having the whole conversation again.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I'd be
So,
like, didn't we already hear this? Yeah, no, that's a good way to do it
mhm.
for sure.
Right.
Take notes, Riverdale writers. Um, so then we got Britta and Cheryl talking to Tony at school, and or I should say Abigail. Abigail is like, I want to adopt Britta. And Tony's like, that's great, but there's a lot of things that have to happen before that. And essentially, Abigail is like, push forward, like completely hitting on Tony, like just saying
Yeah.
oh, do you want to like come by later tonight and like talk about it more? Or, she was very, very forward with
Yeah,
her, which
definitely. Also, I'm just like Britta, like, does she even want to be adopted by Abigail?
by Abigail.
Like,
That's a really good point, because they make Britta very, very obedient to Cheryl slash
mhm.
Abigail, and even when she turns into Abigail, she's very obedient. And it's just an interesting thing, because like I'm assuming that the reason why is like she's in her mind, she's like, this is better than like my whole family rejecting me, like at least I
Yeah,
have someone who cares
right,
about me,
right.
even though it's like a ghost essentially, which is
Like, how did Britta
funny.
just say, okay, this is cool.
Like,
I'm
let's
all
just
about
keep it
this.
moving. Yeah, exactly. She's not gonna turn to Tony at any point and be like, by the way, this is what's happening. I mean, that might still happen.
Yeah.
I wonder what Britta's purpose is outside of, because at one point I was like, oh, she's gonna find this out and then she's gonna go tell people, but like she hasn't done it yet. So I'm like, okay, she's just gonna like be around and like kind of keep an eye and help and be an apprentice and be,
Hmm.
she said she was going to be essentially a mole. Like Abigail's already like sent her off to like be the person to
Yeah.
like get more information. So I don't know. But anyway, Tony says that she's going to be busy tonight, but she's going to be working at the White Worm. So Abigail decides that she's going to swing by. So that's that. I will say, just, since we're going to be talking about CHONI for a second, I'm sure, um it was nice to see Cheryl slash Abigail, or her character, I should say, just completely smitten by Tony and like
Yes.
hitting on her. And it felt, and as adults, it felt almost like a really cute, like, I don't know. I loved the moment. I was really
I
into
did
it.
too, because we haven't gotten really any Shawnee since
Yeah.
they've been adults.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just taken too long to get them back together.
It's taken a real long ass time. I know. It's really, I feel for the Shoney fans out there who are really, really want them to get together, because it feels like
Yeah.
there's gonna be a few more steps until then. Um
Yeah,
but I guess one thing that
definitely.
we can talk about is, the fact that Abigail's going after Tony, saying like we're meant to be like all this stuff, and she's gonna hit on her, and she's gonna try to get her back essentially.
Mhm.
Is it still technically a Shoney relationship when
Oh,
Cheryl
man.
isn't a part of the conversation?
I feel like you're ruining it when you say it like that.
I know, I know I am, but I'm like, I gotta say it. I gotta say it.
It's so true, but maybe, like, Abigail's forwardness with Tony will reignite something in Tony to be like, "Huh, I kinda miss Cheryl."
Yeah, that's
And then
true.
they help to get Cheryl back or something, like Britta and Tony have this thing to get
Mm,
Cheryl back or whatever. I
right.
think that
And
could
just
happen
like she
maybe.
was saved, episodes like, seasons ago from the asylum, like that would be a nice, like,
Mhm.
kind of full
Oh,
circle moment.
yes. And
Yeah.
they kiss. Oh my gosh, I would
Yeah.
love that.
Epic, iconic.
Mhm.
Um, so that'll be interesting. It's also, I'm wondering, and we can talk about it at the very end of the episode when she cracks the mirror, but Cheryl's still kind of inside of her somewhere. Like, even though Nana says that she's
Right.
in nothingness or whatever, it seems like she's still kind of contained in the body. So part of me
Mhm.
also wonders how much of this she's observing. Like, is she observing her relationship that she's trying to grow with Tony? Is she
Oh.
is she just going to sit there and be like, oh, I was there when you kissed her, or I was there when we were talking about this, so like really it was Abigail, but like I was there too? Like, I just want to see how they're going to bring it all together, because if Cheryl just shows
Yeah.
up, then it's going to be like a full reset, and then we're going to be 2 seasons from now like having to figure out whether or not Shoni are together.
That's very true. Cause like, it when Cheryl is back in her body, it's like she's gonna be like, "What happened?"
Yeah,
And then, like, someone has to tell her everything, it's like, "Oh, okay."
this
No,
is
I
what's
think
happened.
I think
Yeah.
I think definitely what you're saying, like, Cheryl knows what's going on
Yeah.
inside wherever she
Inside
is.
wherever she is. Yeah, exactly.
Wherever she is.
All right, moving on. Cutting to Veronica and Hermione at the Pembroke, and Kevin is sitting there sipping tea, just trying to hear the whole conversation.
Mhm.
I I just like, just really quickly with Kevin, why did he need to be there? I know that they had to like make it like he's a huge fan of Real Housewives, but like, did they have
Mhm.
to make him the big fan? And did he have to sit there being like, I'm so excited to see your mom, who I've known for the last 17 years? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
And
I,
then, like, just his reactions, they just keep
yeah.
showing his reactions. It's like, give Kevin a real
Give him a
storyline.
real story. Why is he sitting there? Like, go be a deputy. Like, now you're a deputy. Go take care of the baby. Like, what are you doing?
Baby Anthony, like, come
Baby
on.
Anthony. Where's baby Anthony? Um, so Hermione's putting on a bit of a show. Talking about her dad and how she felt about her dad dying.
Mhm.
And Veronica says, like, let's clear the room. I need to talk to you one-on-one. So everybody leaves. Obviously, Kevin's like, fine. He leaves.
Yeah.
Um, and then Veronica goes right out and says, like, I killed my dad. I killed Hiram. And the first thing that I thought, because it's like typical Riverdale, like in my mind, I'm always like, is she mic'd?
I
Like,
thought that too. Oh my god, I thought it was gonna be like
like, aren't
everyone was
they?
gonna find out in that
Yeah,
moment, and then it was
exactly.
gonna air on the Real Housewives.
Exactly. But it doesn't seem like that's what they were playing at, but you never know, you never know. So she does end up, confessing that she did do it. And Hermione and Veronica have like one of my favorite moments between the two of them that I've probably ever seen. Like, the acting was fantastic between the
Mhm.
two of them, Marisol and Cami, and um it's a perspective that I think that you assume from Hermione like all these years, but you never hear her vocalize it. And I don't think there was ever an opportunity for her to vocalize this particular situation where she basically says, like, your dad came into the picture and it was just us two in the beginning, and he didn't love me. And he always just loved you. Like, you were his number one. And that's when Veronica has a bit of a breakdown moment, and she's like, I didn't
Mm.
realize that, I wasn't being a good daughter to you, and I'm sorry, and I want to mend that relationship. What did you think of that scene?
I really loved it because I did love Hermione's dramatic entrance, but I
Yeah.
also was like, "Oh no, this is just gonna be so fake, and she's just gonna she's not gonna wanna have any alone time with Veronica, she's gonna want everything recorded."
Right.
But, like, that moment was just it just shows that Hermione's still there,
Yeah, yeah,
and it was a very vulnerable moment.
for
Like, it
sure.
was very real, and like how Hermione says later, like, it was very raw.
Yeah,
Um, and they definitely needed that conversation.
100%. I definitely
Absolutely.
agree with that. Yeah, it was a great conversation. Um, And then Archie, so then it cuts to Archie, and he's at home, and he's upstairs, and he starts to hear some creaking as he's like, standing picking up a tool, and right away he falls right through to the main floor. But this time, instead of being completely indestructible, he's now bleeding from his head. He's like in pain, and so now we're like, oh, the powers, are they temporary? Is he, like, he's starting to lose his powers. Oddly enough, talking about Riverdale, the fact that I'm sad that he's losing his powers is like,
I
who
know.
am I?
I thought like the superpower thing was about to go away. Like I thought it was just gonna
Yeah.
be like a 2 episode thing. I was like, no, no, keep
Yeah.
it. Keep it a
I
little
know.
longer.
Now I'm out here being like, what are you doing? He needs his
You're
powers.
right.
So anyway, then it cuts to Tabitha, and you find out that she found this guy, I think his name is Daniel, and
Mhm.
he lost his hearing late in life as well. And so she wanted him to connect with Jughead to see if he could help with like learning sign language, or try to find a way, to kind of heal himself through this. And Jughead finally agrees, and he says, I'm going to do it. And he makes an appointment with him.
Mhm.
Cool. We're on the right track with Jughead. Great. Then it cuts to this moment that I can't wait to talk to you about, because Betty is woken up with a nice caress on the face from the one and only TBK standing over her in the FBI office. She's handcuffed to the couch, and yeah, she must have dozed off, and yeah, he's like literally standing right over her. And she ends up, he ends up saying like, "Oh, you and Archie are getting pretty close right now, and I heard that you were here because the explosion was in all the papers." um and then the thing that really I didn't understand at all until I watched it twice, and I watched it the second time around, and I was like, wait a minute, he just leaves. Like, he literally is
Yeah.
just like, "So happy to see you, Betty," and then he just walks away, and I was like, what? Why do you think that happened? And like, what was I didn't understand it whatsoever. This crown jewel that he wants and is obsessed with, he's just gonna leave her like wake her up and then handcuff her. Like, he didn't even have to wake her up at that point. He could have just like, we could have had a creepy moment where he was
Right.
like observing her, and then we just kind of like got scared, and then like he could have but he was there, and then she was handcuffed, like perfect for the picking, and he just left. What was that all about?
I First of all, that caress and saying "Pretty Betty" in that voice ruined my entire night. I hated that so much.
Yeah.
But it, you're exactly right. Like, why,
Why?
why was he just like, you know, "Hey, what's up, bestie? I'm
Peace.
I might hurt Archie. Bye."
I'm out. Yeah. I was very confused.
Why wasn't Betty like maybe grabbing something with her hand that's not handcuffed, and like
Yeah.
she was just so chill about it,
He
kind
was
of
like,
like, "Oh,
"Hey." Yeah.
this could have been my time to capture him."
Right.
And you just let him. I mean, I know she was handcuffed, but I feel
But
like
still,
she could have tried something.
like even in that particular situation, because we don't find, like, in a couple scenes I'll talk about it, but like we don't even find out how she gets out of that situation. Like, were there
You're
keys
right.
somewhere? Did she end up grabbing the phone and just calling Archie? Like, what happened after? We were just left in that moment, and then we just moved on, and I was like, what
Yeah.
the hell was that?
But clearly the trash bag killer is enjoying the chase by Betty, and that's why he
Right.
doesn't hurt her. And also,
Yes.
he's definitely obsessed with her because he killed Glenn because he hurt
he
Betty.
he hurt Betty, yeah.
Right.
But that's the thing. At that point in time, he literally could have just been like, "I'm gonna take you and I'm gonna put you in a hole," like, because that's my jam with you,
Right.
Like, I don't like, unless there's something more nefarious happening. Like, maybe, like, does he want to groom her, like, and make her a serial killer as well? Like, what is his end
Yeah.
game if it's not just being obsessed with her and wanting to keep her in a hole? Like, this moment didn't really make much sense to me. But
Yeah.
anyways.
I'm not sure.
Anyways, audience, ponder, listeners, let us know what you thought about that, because I do not know why he just left her there. Okay, cutting to the White Worm, and Abigail is talking to Tony, and she's like, "Thomasina, like, what was she like?" And Tony kind of knows a little bit about her great grandmother, great aunt, and Abigail kind of defends her, and she was like, she was the best person ever. She was murdered by a pirate. Like, it was one of my favorite lines, like, just the way it was said and Tony's reaction to it. She was like, "Pirate?" Like,
A
what?
pirate warlock.
Pirate warlock, exactly. Sorry, I forgot the warlock part.
Yes. Oh,
Oh
that was
man.
so weird. But
I was like,
also, like, wasn't there a little bit of a Harry Potter reference at the beginning?
what part
She
was that?
was drinking the beer and she said, "It's
Oh,
a
the
little
butter
tart. Can
beer.
you add some butter?" And I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if that was like a Harry Potter reference in
Maybe it
some
was a
way.
Harry Potter reference. Also, maybe it was a historical reference. Like, I don't know what they used to do back
Maybe.
then with the beer.
I don't know either.
Maybe that's what they used to do. Just pour a little melted butter in there and call it a day.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. But yeah,
Um,
good catch. So in that moment, as she's talking to Tony about this murderer, this murdering pirate, um, Fangs comes right into the shot, and he's like, "Hey, baby," and then he like kind of gives Tony a kiss, and Abigail has this like visceral reaction to seeing them together and seeing
Same.
Fangs again, because he was the murderous pirate. Like, he was
Mm-hmm.
the killer, the pirate
You're
warlock.
right.
So she's kind of like, what the hell's happening? And then they kind of have to catch her up because she doesn't have all of Cheryl's memories, so she doesn't know that they have a baby together. She doesn't know that they're together. Um, and so she kind of freaks out and then runs away. Um, so anyway, cutting to Archie and Betty talking about the TBK as if she wasn't handcuffed and almost murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
all she says is, the TBK is going to be coming after you, so you have to be careful, especially now that your powers are not currently working. And I think in this moment, that's when they kind of tried to figure out like what the situation is with his powers. Like, suddenly he lost them, and he thinks she said, I think the trigger word for him was, she says like, what is Superman's kryptonite? Like, what is your kryptonite?
Right.
And he's like, ding ding, it's the palladium, which is
Of
also a
course.
material. And I was like, okay, cool. So he had it in his pocket, he like gives it to her, and he says like, it's
Mm-hmm.
that must be it, that must be the reason why. Take it away from me and let's see what happens, let's see if my powers come back. As she's saying that, she says, you still have to keep an eye on yourself, take care of yourself. And we see a shadow kind of pass in the background. So we know
Mm-hmm.
someone's been listening or watching. Originally, I thought it was Frank, because I was like, maybe he's just like trying to keep a tab on
With
everybody.
that ominous music in the background, though.
You never know. You never know. Um, that's a very good point. One thing I do want to ask you, because it doesn't really get resolved in this episode, but these migraines. So Betty talks about her migraines happening in this scene as well. What do you think the significance of them are? Like, what more does she is she going to be able to do?
I don't know, and I'm very like confused on why she can't see the trash bag killer's
Yeah,
aura. And I know she said he's in her blind spot, but I don't feel like that's a really good explanation. Like,
it
I
really
need more
isn't.
than that.
Yeah.
Um, is he just using a really good like material trash bag
Like
that it just
Teflon.
blocks
Yeah, it just locks in his aura. Yeah.
really expensive trash bags that just blocks the aura?
That, I mean, you could be completely right. He knows about, like, maybe he done knew about the superpowers coming. I don't know. This guy coming out
Well,
of nowhere, like, who knows?
yeah.
Who knows?
Okay, but also it has to be also just the guy in general because she would have seen his aura when they were doing construction together.
Right. Oh yeah, because he was there. She was there as
Hmm.
well. Yeah. Putting
Right.
her boyfriend's
So I don't.
hand into a vice.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, and I'm very curious to know what exactly, you know, is the reason she can't see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to bring that up, and knowing how it ends off with Jughead with his like powers ramping up by the end of the episode, like, what
Hmm.
does that mean for her? Like, is she going to be able to like do something else? Like, I don't know, like mind control, like, who knows? And
I'll have
then,
to think about that one.
yeah, let's theorize that. I'm really interested to
Yeah.
see like what where this is all
Apparently
going to
we're good
involve.
at that.
Yeah,
So,
right. Exactly. So then it cuts to Jughead with Daniel, the guy who's helping him, and he tells him to try to write in silence for 5 hours. Just sit by yourself and try to write. So he puts him in the room. We have these like very sporadic like little moments with Jughead just to kind of keep his story going, but he doesn't really have anything involved in the story as it kind of continues until, yeah, and the end at least. Anyway, so there's that scene. Then it cuts to Veronica and Hermione talking, and it's the next morning. She like put together like a cute little breakfast, and she asks Veronica if she can have that same emotional moment, minus the talk about the murder, um, but she wants it on camera. And this is kind of a moment where Veronica reluctantly agrees at the end of it all, but you can tell that like, there's this kind of weird ulterior motive with Hermione. Like, what's her
mm,
game at? She's kind of looking at her like a little bit suspiciously. How do you think that we're supposed to feel as the audience with Veronica's reaction to it, while still wanting Hermione to have this like honest, earnest relationship with her daughter.
I think that when we saw them first talk without everyone around, we were just like, oh, like, Hermione isn't, what we thought,
Right.
she's like, there's more to her than like how she's acting when the cameras aren't around.
Hmm.
And then it just kind of gets you back to how you felt beforehand when they have
Exactly.
that conversation. And it's
Exactly.
like, okay, can we not trust Hermione after all? So I think
Right.
it gives you that doubt, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, for sure. Anyway, we'll talk about her a little bit more later, but it cuts to Abigail, and she comes in and she is bereft. She is so
Positively bereft.
positively bereft about Thomasina and how she's with Fangs Fogarty, the descendant of the warlock pirate, and Nana starts getting mad at her. She says she's not focusing on Riverdale, and that's when she says she's like, the last thing you should be focusing on is that serpent trash. And then Abigail has her moment. She snaps
Mhm.
right out of that chair, looks Nana dead in the face, says, "Old lady, you don't know shit," and she
Yeah.
chucks her into a room of hay.
I do not understand that. Like, I
Didn't
try
get it.
so hard to keep up with references, like movie references they make, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, is this a reference I just don't know? Or is
Yeah.
there more to this?
Whenever I
Like,
think of
why the
somebody
hay?
being locked into a room of hay, I think of Rumpelstiltskin, where she had to like
Yeah.
knit it into gold. But
I swear to I swear to God, if the next episode we see her doing,
she's just
I'm
out there
done.
knitting away. Yeah,
That's it.
we're in fairy tale land now. Like everything is a fairy tale.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my goodness. Actually, I would not put it past the Riverdale to be honest. Like now that we're talking about it, but that is ridiculous. So yeah, she gets chucked into a room, she locks her up, and then she's like, I'll deal with Riverdale, but I'm gonna get my girl back first. Goodbye.
Mhm.
And she locks her up and then she's gone. And Nana's like sitting there in hay. Like
Yeah.
the first thing that I thought was like, what room has hay in it? Like there's like they
Right.
couldn't just put a bed in there. Like, did they just like I didn't understand. Like first I thought she was gonna be in the barn, but like
Mhm.
it didn't look like a barn. So I was like,
Yeah.
what is
So I
this?
that's what made me think, like, is this like a reference to something that I
Yeah.
just don't get? Because it just felt so purposeful and I just didn't get it.
For sure. Yeah, I didn't get it either. Um anyway, so then it cuts to Jughead with Daniel again, and this time Daniel, because he wasn't able to write, he tells him, um try checking out my comic. Like when he went deaf, he drew pictures, read it and see if it helps kind of inspire you as well. So once again, quick scene with Jughead. We're moving on, and this is when Veronica is chilling in her office at the casino, and we get our man Anatol coming right through again, and she's like, "What do you want? You already have your money. Like, why are you here? Are you here to kill me?" And he nods, and he's like, "Yeah, actually, I'm here to kill you." And in the moment while she's like trying to figure out what the heck's happening, he says something like, "You American women dot 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 dot," and then she kind of is like, "Wait a minute, why, like who sent you to kill me?" And just before he says his next sentence, Geraldo shoots him through the window. But before we move on to the fact that, like he's now dead, like, can we talk about the
Mhm.
fact that Geraldo has like super like physics,
Yes.
like shooting, like it went up
That didn't
and
make
then
any
it went
sense.
that way. Like,
Like, I thought about that too. I was like, there's no way that man saw that
yeah,
guy up there. Like, you couldn't even see him there. It's like, how and
how?
how?
Like if Veronica had to walk to the window to see him, then he wasn't in the line of sight at all.
No.
Anyway, I just thought it was funny when I watched it back the second time. I was like, how in the world did he shoot him with a perfect shot through that window and
Right.
she couldn't even see him? So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Geraldo also has superpowers. At this point, I would not put it past him.
Makes him even more sus.
Even more
So,
sus for sure. So anyway, Geraldo decides to help with disposing the body. He kind of just goes right into work mode. Um, and Veronica says like, "Oh, maybe it was Hermosa who,
mhm.
she must have been the one who sent him. She's probably really pissed at me." And then that's when Geraldo's like, "Because you killed your father?" So he kind of exposes that he knows about the dad. But then he goes on to say that Abuelita doesn't know anything, because he tries to protect her from all the shit that's happening in the family. And he does say something really interesting. And now that we have this kind of big theory about her, Geraldo and Abuelita, he says, "No person is just one thing." And like when I first watched it, I was like, "Oh, that's so sad." Like Veronica's
Yeah,
already going through it. She's hearing it now, like, it's not black and white. Like everybody has a gray area in their lives. Um, but now I'm like, is he kind of cluing in that he knew, and he's kind of judging her to a degree as well? Like, I don't know now. I don't know like what his play
right.
is.
And he says that Abuelita does not know anything,
Right.
but I'm starting to think that maybe Geraldo, he's just her shooter man guy.
Yeah.
Like
Like
she, just
assassin.
like her. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And also, how did he find out that Veronica did that? Because no
Yeah.
one else in the family knew,
Like,
and they're all part of that like underworld. Like there were tons of people there
yeah.
from Hiram's life, and
So like,
it was
how
just
is he privy to
interesting.
this information? That's
Is
it.
Hermione like in it too and told him?
Right, exactly. So that's, I wrote down questions. I was like, first of all, was it Hermosa? Do you believe that it was actually Hermosa? Was it
No.
Hermione? Do you think that it was maybe Hermione? Or do you think it was Abuelita? Like, he says women, American women, and the first two that came to my mind were Hermione and Hermosa, but she says Hermosa, so I was like, I don't know about that one.
Yeah. I I would like to hope that Hermione would never do
Try to
something
kill
like
her
that
daughter?
though,
Yeah.
because I don't think Veronica needs that.
No, I don't think that she
Yeah.
needs another, parent trying to murder her, but yeah.
No.
But do
Maybe
you
a
think,
grandmother though.
yeah, maybe the grandma, maybe the grandma. I think that that sounds like a better theory at this moment.
Right.
All right, moving on to Jughead finishing the comic, and he's kind of inspired, so he tries to write again or type again on his typewriter, but instead he pulls out the piece of paper and starts drawing a rectangle, and then he starts to draw. And then in his monologue, he talks about how he starts to see his writing in more of a visual way. And I kind of got excited, which is weird
I did
because I was
too.
like, oh my God, he's becoming a comic book writer. Like, this
Hmm.
whole story is going to become him, becoming the writer of Riverdale, the comic, or whatever it might be. And I was
It
like,
feels so full circle.
yes, I love a full circle, and the
It's
way that it kind
very
of,
on brand.
yeah, I
Yeah,
thought it was
I
great.
loved it.
Yeah. And then Tabitha is so happy. She writes, "I love it," on a little note card. And he kisses her and thanks her for like sticking by him this whole time.
So sweet.
So then it cuts to Archie, and he's at home, working away and doing his thing. And the same guy who found the palladium in the first beginning of the episode, he's like, "Hey, like I found another piece." And Archie's like, "Oh my God, amazing." And then in that moment, he's like, whack, he hits him over the head. He hits Archie over the head, and he drags him away. Were you gagged? Were you shocked?
I audibly gasped. Like
Yeah,
I did
you're like,
not expect it for 1 second
yeah,
because, like, when we first saw the guy, I was thinking to myself, like, oh, this is so sweet. He didn't take the palladium when he could have. Like, that's so
yeah,
nice of him. And
yeah.
then I thought it was another sweet little construction guy moment. And then he just whacked him, and I was just like,
No,
what? So
yeah.
that took me by surprise
I
for
was pretty
sure.
shocked by that too. I was like, holy, they like really just went in there. But now we know what the
Hmm.
TBK looks like. And like, that's kind of answering a few questions for us, because we were like, who is it? Was it Glenn? It's not Glenn. And now we
Mhm.
know it was some kind of just he seems like we don't really know much more about him, but we know what he looks like. So how do you feel about the fact that like the TBK is now officially like unmasked?
Well, I feel like it makes sense that it was someone we didn't know because this
Yeah,
was someone who was in, uh,
like Betty's
wherever
life, like was
in
it
Betty's life
Chicago?
in,
No, Quantico.
it yeah,
Wherever that
Quantico
was.
in Virginia.
Yes.
So I was like, "Okay, so it's not gonna be someone from Riverdale," but as time went on, I kept thinking like, "Well, maybe it is." And then, like, last week out everybody had convinced me it was Dr. Curdle Jr., and I was extremely upset, and I just believed it, and so I'm so relieved
Relieved. You're like,
that my
thank
man
goodness.
is not bad.
Yeah, he's a good
Um,
guy.
so I'm okay with him, being unmasked now because clearly they're setting up for there to be, some wild chase between TBK
Right.
and Betty now. So
Right.
I'm
Exactly.
interested to see that it doesn't end when he's unmasked like it normally does.
Yeah,
Like,
usually you're
that's
like,
normally how it is.
yeah, that's true.
So
That's a really good
I'm
point.
interested to see that aspect of it.
Yeah. Um anyway, so he gets dragged away. Then it cuts to Betty getting a call that the TBK is in an alleyway, or he they saw him in an alleyway and that she needs to go check it out. Which I guess makes sense now that like, her posters of a guy in a trash bag, like keep an eye out for this guy. It all connects to this moment, which is still
Yeah,
stupid to me, but sure.
it worked for her.
It worked for her. She just ran right there. So she goes all the way down the alley. This guy with a trash bag on his head is at the end of the alley. And right before she gets to him, he's like, "Don't shoot. I was asked to wear this." And he was told to tell the person, a blonde lady, to check the trash can. So she goes to the nearby trash can, she knocks him down, and sure enough, Glenn's body parts are now being recovered, and she's like, I think he's dead now, like it's over.
Yeah.
That was his leg, like it's done. That's his arm.
It's
um
the end, yeah.
it's the end for him. Then it cuts to Veronica's eulogy, and she has this really great scene, and I don't really want to skirt over it, but that's really all we see is like this moment where she has this eulogy, and she's talking about how shitty her dad was, but also that she, like, she couldn't stop loving him, and she apologizes for the fact that she will always love her daddykins. That's like her last line, even when she says like, even when I don't want to. And I
Yeah.
thought it was a really sweet, emotional eulogy. It's almost something that you would think of when you think of someone who like you love to hate in real life. Like, if I were to
Yeah.
write their eulogy, what would I say? I don't want to be disrespectful, but I also want to make it known that they were a piece of shit person, but
Right.
also they're dead, so I kind of love them still.
Yeah.
That's exactly the energy that I was channeling from that scene.
I think it was I think it was, like, the perfect eulogy for Hiram Lodge,
Yeah.
like, perfect. I did kinda laugh a little, when she went from, "Yeah, he tried to kill everyone, but you know what? He was a state champion wrestler in high school,"
That
don't
fixes
forget
everything.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But overall, it was a really good one, and it showed how much she's, like, grappling with, loving him, but also, like, not condoning what he's done,
Right.
and it was
Exactly.
just, like it was very good.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And yeah, that was the moment that I think that I was like, okay, if Hiram is dead officially, I'll be okay with it, because I feel like we got that moment. And I think
Yeah.
actually the voice note was the real moment that I was like, all right, let's close this book on Hiram. But this
Mhm.
was the first piece to it, and it shows Reggie have a moment, kind of like a change of heart with how he sees Veronica as well. He has like, Charles Melton did like a silent tear running down his face when she says, I love
Mhm.
you even when I don't love you. Um, and so it just kind of resolves itself by the end of this episode. But anyway, so that we have that scene. Then it cuts to Archie tied up. I just really want to quickly talk about this one shot. I know that I never usually get this granular, but like, I thought the shot was really, really cool. And even watching it the second time, I was like, this was such a cool shot, because it shows him on a pole, but the shot is
Mhm.
like almost dizzying. So for a second, I was like, are they hanging Archie? Like, just the way it was
Oh my
visually shot
god.
felt very,
Mhm.
very aggressive. And then it kind of zoomed out, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, at least he's on the ground. But it was a really scary shot to see,
Yeah.
like, Archie completely out and his head hanging down. I was like, oh my God, like, this could be a serious situation. But, anyways, still a serious situation because he's tied up in his attic and the TBK is wearing his mask and he's super, super excited to chop up Archie. He's like, I'm going to kill you. I know that that palladium, messes with you. So I'm super excited to chop you up now that your flesh is all delicious. And he talks about the
Uh,
flesh, and it was a lot.
yeah.
It was a lot.
He was a little too excited, and I did
Yeah.
not like that one bit.
Yeah,
Nope.
for
He
sure.
was like, "Yeah, I can't wait to cut you into little chunks."
Yeah, basically. Um the one thing that I thought about was he didn't gag him, right? So he could have easily screamed in this neighborhood. Like, you always, like, whenever I think about the setting,
True.
I'm always like, you didn't take him to like a barn or like an abandoned, factory. Like, you took him back to his house, like upstairs, where
Very,
it's
very true.
half of it's blown off. Like,
Right.
like
Anybody could have heard him.
anybody could have heard him. So anyway, and then even how this scene kind of ends, I was also like, how do they not catch him? Anyways, um our girl Alice comes in like like the moment right before he's about to saw his hand off or something, and she comes in with Bingo. Thank goodness for her. She says, like, Bingo has been annoying me. He chewed up my kitten heels, like, get him out of my house. And Archie, basically under the threat of his throat getting slit and the TBK basically saying, like, I will kill her now if you do not get rid of her. Um and he says, like, go, just leave. And she leaves Bingo with him, and then she closes the door. And in this moment, that's when Bingo kind of comes up the stairs and pushes our man TBK out the window in a perfect 10 out of 10 drop. Like, what did you think of that moment?
We love Bingo. I loved that moment. It's
Love
so
Bingo.
insane, and I loved that Bingo had his moment.
He had his moment.
He had 4 broken legs, and they healed over the span of 3 days, and now he's pushing serial killers out of a house.
Give him the
Iconic.
award. Iconic.
Um, but also I was thinking like a little too hard about this, but I was like, okay, so Alice unhooks him and is walking back to her house.
Yeah.
She could have seen TBK flying out of there,
That's
possibly grabbed him. I don't know.
That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is, if you're going to do it in a nice little suburban neighborhood where the walls are currently paper thin, he could have
Right.
easily, even in that moment, instead of being like, good job, Bingo, he could have been like, hey, someone just flew out the window, like, grab him, like, I'm upstairs, like, anything.
Right.
Like, it was just,
I don't even know how he got untied.
yeah, yeah, we were just never
Oh,
going to know.
maybe he kicked the palladium away, so
Maybe.
he had his strength back.
Yeah, who
I
knows?
don't know.
Actually, I do have a question about that now that we're kind of getting to the end of it. Is it confirmed that the palladium is the thing that's affecting him? Because, like, they don't really ever say, like, he never says the next day, like, oh, I got my powers back today. Like, the palladium was the issue. It was just a theory.
Yeah,
So,
that
like,
is that is true.
but
I guess we don't really know if that's
yeah,
actually what it is. That
because
would be like a good little plot twist of it not being it and it was something else this whole time.
right. Because
What if
that's,
Betty is the
yeah.
kryptonite?
Oh, that would be crazy.
Hmm.
But yeah, because, like, even just thinking about how the kind of the three superhero, or I should say four, can't forget Bingo,
Hmm.
but the three of them are kind of going through like an evolution to a degree. Like, Jughead has this, he's by the end of the episode, he has something new. Betty's having these headaches that, like, we don't really know what they mean. That one sounds a little bit more debilitating, but so does Archie, losing his powers. So, like, I don't know. Maybe there is something
Oh,
connected to what you just said. I know we were kind of joking about it, but like maybe
yeah.
they are each other's kryptonite. Like being together is
Oh
what's
my
making them
God.
affected.
The Bugheads would
Oh!
be so excited.
The Bugheads and the Barchies would be crying. So like maybe let's not do that for this podcast because we're both big Barchie fans. But
Oh yeah. But
anyway,
also maybe their powers are morphing into something else because Jughead just got this power
this
all of a
power.
sudden.
Yeah, exactly. So but I want to know what that is. Like what's more
Hmm.
than being indestructible? Like I don't
Yeah,
even
I
know.
know.
Anyway, so cutting to Hermione with Veronica, she says bye, thank you for everything. Um, and this is when Veronica goes upstairs and she talks to Reggie and she says, thank you so much for coming. No one from the group even showed up to the memorial. They must have all been busy. That was
Which
an
makes
interesting,
sense,
it makes sense,
honestly.
but it was an interesting call out for her to just say it and kind of just keep it moving. Cause I was like, do you
Yeah.
care? Do you not care? Are you upset about it? Like, or is this just like something that you would think of in high school? You're like, you didn't come to my dad's, funeral, even though he tried to kill you 3 times. But like, it was interesting that like, that wasn't like, she just says it and she kind of
Yeah.
just keeps moving.
I guess maybe she just understands that, I mean, what Hiram has done to the gang since he got to
Yeah.
Riverdale the first time, and she just understands. Also, I just wonder, like, if they were just like, "Oh, we're not going. Like, there's no way we're not going," or they're just wrapped up in their own
Their own like
things.
Archie literally almost got chopped up into pieces like 5 minutes
Right.
ago. Like Betty's out here just trying to find a serial killer. Jughead is
Hmm.
literally he's gone deaf and he's dealing with his own
Yeah.
shit. So like
Hmm.
I get why they weren't there, but the call out was interesting to me because I'm like, why are you making that a thing? Are we supposed to be worried about that or concerned? But if anything, it just goes to show how separate, and we've said this so many times on this podcast, but like how separate Veronica's story is and has become from the rest of the characters. Like I know we
Right.
even said with Jughead he's kind of doing his own thing, but when you see these two characters of the core four, the two centralized characters, Barchie and or Archie and Betty, you're like everyone is so separate. Like Veronica is like on the other side. Like she is
Right.
not even she doesn't know there's a serial killer around. She has no like details.
No.
Like she doesn't know anything. So it makes me I and I'm a part of me feels glad because I just want her to get a really good meaty story, but
Hmm.
also I'm kind of sad because we grew to love the fact that they all kind of come together by the end of it and work together on solving something. And
Right.
the fact that she doesn't know that like one of her best friends was like being pet by a murderer and the other her ex-boyfriend was almost chopped up, like, and her other friend has gone deaf, like it doesn't feel like she's even checking in with them.
Right.
And I know her dad just died, but she was the one that put the hit on him, so like are we supposed to feel bad for her when she should be checking in on her friends who've like gone through something really traumatic as well? Like I don't know.
Yeah, it is very odd that she really is so removed from everyone. Like,
Yeah.
at least the other three have some connection in some
Right.
way, but like, there's no connection to Veronica.
Zero.
Um,
Like she's not getting a power, I'm assuming. Like
like,
she's not getting a superpower.
I guess. Well, also, Cheryl's kind of removed too in a way, but
True,
not
true.
honestly not as much as Veronica. Like, there's
Yeah,
literally nothing connecting
at
to
all.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, at least she has Reggie though
At least she's
by
got
her side.
Reggie, and at least he's
Yeah,
kind of like doing his thing with her. Yeah, for sure. Without
they got
that,
that casino to deal with.
make that money then, I guess. With that being said, Reggie does say like, I didn't realize your relationship. I shouldn't have been judging your relationship with your dad. I support you 100%. I love you. And they have a really cute veggie moment, which is really cute. I enjoy that.
Hmm. I did
Then,
too.
of course, Geraldo comes right in at the very end of that scene, and he says, "By the way, I have a recording for you." Um, he does. It was on it was on Anatol's body, I guess. Right? Was that the
Right.
assumption?
Hmm.
Um, of Hiram's final moments. So number one, he's already listened to it because he's like, "You should listen to it."
Yeah.
But the second thing was now that we've talked about this, throughout this episode, like who is Geraldo for real? This is sus to me. Like he happens to have a recording of Hiram's
Right.
final words where Hiram sounds perfectly normal and
He
he's like,
does.
"Hello, this is my last thing that I'm going to do before I die." Like he doesn't sound in any distress.
No, he doesn't. That is a very good
Yeah.
like observation. Yeah, that is definitely suspect.
So now I'm like, now that we've talked about it, I'm just like, maybe there is more to this. Maybe Geraldo is in on this. Maybe Abuelita is in on this, and like maybe
Hmm.
Hiram is in fact alive. Like I don't know, but
Right.
yeah. Anyway, moving on to one of the last scenes, Betty and Archie talking. Betty decides that she's going to be leaving Riverdale to get TBK to follow her out, and then she'll circle back and um I think it makes like it sounds like a good enough plan for her to like kind of
Hmm.
get him out of there.
Right.
They kiss and yeah, they have a cute little Barchie moment, which I was happy about. I was like, Barchie.
I
Yeah.
I noticed a little thing from that scene though that
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's cool. So as like a true crime fan,
Yeah, yeah.
I noticed that Betty said I didn't realize when I was watching, but when she said it in the last scene, when she said the construction guy's name was Dennis.
Dennis, yes.
Um, so there's a serial killer in real life called BTK, and his name is Dennis Rader, and so that's like a
Oh.
play on that serial killer in real life. His name's Dennis, and they're both Dennis.
Did they do something
TBK and BTK. So
did he do something similar? Like is was he that kind of serial killer?
no,
Okay.
it his so BTK stands for bind, torture, kill. So it's a little different,
Got it, got it, got it.
but it's a play on that actual serial killer. So I thought that was really cool.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, for sure. TBK. There you go. Wow.
Yeah,
True crime really works out for you when you listen to those.
yeah.
You're like, I found that nugget. Anyway, yes. So Barchi has that moment, really cute. Veronica gets to listen to Hiram's recording. And it's a really sad montage of like all of the like, all the way up until like the first time we ever see Hiram. And he's kind of talking over in this very dramatic, like, sequence of events that happen, her graduation and the rum business. And he mentions how they had that little spat and he's leaving the rum business to her. And um there's a lot of really sweet moments and earnest moments that I was just like,
Mhm.
ah, I miss Mark Hiram. Like in that moment,
Right?
I did miss him for sure.
I definitely got emotional.
Yeah.
Um, just like a little tear, maybe.
Maybe
I
a little
if
tear.
I think I started like it was like I was feeling the same way Veronica did. It was a bittersweet
Totally.
feeling of like Hiram was awful, and it's like it was time for him to not be the big bad anymore. At
Right.
the same time, it's like Mark was so great.
He was so great at being
Like I
bad. I
don't want
know.
him to be
I
gone.
know. I know. I
So it's a weird feeling.
For sure, for sure. But it was definitely a nice kind of like way to end it off because if I feel like if they didn't have that moment where we got to hear his voice, I really would have been like there's no way he's dead. Now I'm like
Yeah.
95% sure he's dead, but that 5% I'm going to hold on to.
Yeah, I'm definitely like teetering. It's either he's like really dead or he's not. I don't
Yeah,
know. There's like explanations for both sides.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
With that said, and while I have you on the pod, I have to ask, we found out this week as well that Riverdale got renewed for a seventh season.
Yes.
But we also heard from our girl Lily Reinhardt months ago where she kind of alluded to the fact that it could be the final season of Riverdale. Number one, how do
Hmm.
you feel about that? And number two, um, now knowing that information that it could possibly be true, how do you think Hiram would fall into the next part of this story if you don't think that it's over for him?
Okay, so I I definitely expected Riverdale to when Lily said season 7 would probably be the last one. it makes sense, you
Yeah.
know, how much more can we do? And also, I'm sure the actors wanna move on to other things, so
Yeah.
I was hoping for at least another season,
Right.
and, I mean, they haven't said it's the final
They
one,
haven't. Yeah. It's still
but
unconfirmed.
I'm still assuming here that it is, and it's gonna be really sad.
Really,
I
really
it's
sad. I know.
'cause
I know.
I mean, I'll I'll still be posting, but it's just gonna be really, really sad, and I'm not ready right now,
Yeah,
at all.
for sure.
But, yeah, so I was really excited that that we still get another season at least.
Mhm.
Um, so Hiram, that's a really good question because really, what more could he do if he is still alive?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like you said, I mean, it seemed like everything was a good send off. How can we do that again? You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
So there is that moment like maybe I just need to maybe I'm just in denial.
Try to move on. Yeah, I know. I know. Trust me. I think we're all a little bit in denial for sure. So you're not the only one. But yeah.
Because if he does come back, I mean, what's he gonna do? Like, is it
Exactly.
just gonna be like how it was?
Yeah. Or is he going to come back kind of reformed and been like, I've been away. I just wanted to like sit on an island for a little bit and get away from
Maybe
everything
he
and to
has a
run
beard or
business.
something.
Maybe he's got a beard. Yeah, exactly. Maybe he had 3 kids with Kelly Ripa. We don't know. We don't know what's going on
Yeah,
with this
right.
with him. Um anyway, sorry, just wanted to put that in there really quickly before we finish
Yeah.
up. So one of the last scenes we see is at Thornhill, and Cheryl is in the reflection of the mirror with Abigail, and she's pounding on it until Abigail is like, "We'll have no more of that, I think," and she breaks the mirror and walks away. And then Britta kind of sees this interaction happen,
Mhm.
and she's like, "Uh-oh, there is something happening here." Um, so I guess going back to what we were talking about before, does that mean that Cheryl's kind of like in her body? Is she stuck in that particular mirror? Is she, we didn't get a lot more past the fact that we see a glimpse of Cheryl in a mirror for a second.
Mhm.
So I
I
guess
think
that's
it
still a
gives us
question.
the hope that Cheryl is still there because Nana Rose was just like, she doesn't exist anymore,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So I think it was just like, oh, thank God, like she's still there, you know,
Yes.
just trapped.
She's just trapped. She's not in the
Yeah.
ether. Yeah. And then the final big moment of the episode, the final scene is Jughead's drawing and Tabitha sitting on the couch, and you hear Tabitha say, Jughead's in focus, but you hear Tabitha say, "I wonder if I, turned off the oven." And then he turns around, he's like, "Did you say something?" And she kind of shakes her head, "No." And then again, he turns around and you hear her say like, "Did I lock the door? I'm not really sure if I locked the door." And then that's when he kind of realizes like, "Did you say that were you thinking this?" And she was like, "Yes." So it's interesting because that was one of the theories that were kind of floating around. I think even NB said it last episode, like maybe it's going to come to a point where he has to,
Mhm.
he's an empath. He thinks about things. He needs to learn how to connect to people to be the better writer. Sorry. Like, that makes sense to me. What did you think about that ending?
Well, well, I screamed because I was like, oh my God, I actually like tweeted something that actually happened
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm never right about things. So I was just like, I was like, "Oh my God, I was finally right about something."
Yeah.
But now that like it's now that we know that it's like that, I have so many thoughts. Like,
Yeah.
is he going to be listening in to Percival Pickens' thoughts for what he wants to do with the town? Is he going to
Ooh,
think of other people's thoughts and write it in his graphic novel or in the newspaper because he writes for the newspaper now?
good
Like,
point.
what's going to happen
What
with
is he
all
gonna
this
do with
now?
that power? Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
I'm like super excited about that.
Yeah. The one thing, like, obviously, I think we're all now on the train of like, yay, powers, let's go.
Yeah.
But at the same time, whenever you introduce something supernatural like this, you always want to make sure that they root it in like believability to a degree,
Hmm.
right? Like, to your point,
Right.
if he's sitting there and Percival's in the corner, like drumming up all these ideas of how to destroy Riverdale, I would want Jughead to be the first person to realize that instead of Archie trying to come up with an idea and this, and like, you know, like this convoluted way, when now that you have powers, you should be able to be like, okay, let's go from point A to point B a little bit faster because we're using the powers that we just got.
Right.
Because I feel like sometimes they introduce powers and then they're like, oh, we're still going to do this. Like, don't worry. We're still going to confuse everybody and do all the stupid things anyway. So that's a really good point. I hope that Jughead does use it, or I'm interested to see what he ends up using it for.
Right.
All right. Well, this is a long pod, so thanks for sticking around. But let's get into our recap roundups before we finish this episode.
Recap roundups. Best moment.
So, Macy, what was your best moment?
Best moment was finding out that Jughead can read people's minds, because, like I said before, I'm never right with theories.
Your theory
and
came through.
The excitement I felt when that happened at the very end was just like through the roof, and everyone was tweeting me like, you were right.
Good job.
You had your Raven Baxter moment. I was like, yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. My best moment was, I put down 3 because, and they're all involving Veronica and her story. The first one was Hermione talking to Veronica at the table with the cameras away, like that moment where she says how she didn't think that Veronica loved her. The eulogy I thought was beautiful, and then Veronica listening to the tape of Hiram. I think that Cammie really shined this episode acting wise, and you know, even Marisol Nichols. Like, I think that the emotion that came through of losing someone that you have conflict with and then having to speak at a eulogy for them, like all those things are so interesting to watch, and I think that Cammie nailed it. And they were fantastic.
It was so good.
Fantastic moments.
WTF moment.
What was your WTF moment?
Well, finding out who TBK was, because like I said, I gasped, like I literally had a reaction to it, and also Bingo pushing him out the house was just such a good moment. Like I really didn't know how he was going to get out of that situation, and then when I saw Bingo with Alice, I was like, this is it.
This is the
Bingo's
moment.
going to get his moment. So
amazing.
It was just like, oh my god, that's crazy, but I love it.
Yeah. My WTF moment was TBK not kidnapping Betty, like I was mentioning in the beginning of the episode. Like, why did that not happen? I don't understand.
MVP.
Who's your MVP?
I think we both have the same one, because it's Tabitha.
Oh, it is Tabitha. Yes, it is.
For being like the best supportive girlfriend ever.
Ever, of all time. Like, she is literally the best character for Jughead. She really like pulls through for him, and I loved her this episode. I know she didn't have like significant dialogue or moments, but she's a fantastic actress to begin with. And then just seeing how much she supports Jughead through this moment was just like very heartwarming to watch. So yes, MVP, yes.
LVP.
Who's your LVP?
Nana Rose and Percival Pickens.
All right.
Because I just know that's just going to be a lot to deal
Something's
with.
going to be. What do you think his big thing is going to be outside of, you know, you said getting rid of the serpents, but like what angle is he playing? Because he's playing kind of like I'm an innocent new person.
British man, yeah.
British man.
I'm sorry, if a British person comes to Riverdale, I'm going to be a little suspect.
Yeah, I would be too.
But I really don't know. He's so mysterious right now. He hasn't given any clue, but I think when Jughead hears his thoughts, we'll get more of an idea of why he's there.
I hope we get that for sure. And yes, I agree with you. Nana, come on, girl. Like, get it together. I also, you know, I don't know if we talked about it 100% in the last episode with NB, but this episode, I'm like, what did Cheryl do to you that you made her, like, you know, like she was like such a second thought, and she was like, yep, my granddaughter is now in the middle of nowhere. I don't care because I wanted a ghost. Like, why? Like, I didn't understand what Cheryl had done to her to make her deserve that. You know?
I think Nana Rose is just being selfish right now.
Right.
She just wants Riverdale back.
Right.
And that's all she's thinking about. Back in the day,
she wants the old times, make Riverdale great again, you know?
Oh, Lord, no.
The best line.
All right, what was your best line?
I'm positively bereft. I don't know why, but I loved that part so much.
I loved her in that scene where she's like completely dramatic and then she turns around and snaps back at Nana. It was such a big ups to Madeline Petch for just being phenomenal as well.
She was great.
She's so great. My best line is that final thing that we hear from Hiram. I said, "Adios, mija, te quiero mucho." Like, I was so sad when I heard it because I was like, he got the mija in there, and that was like, you know, it was just like a perfect shout out to Hiram and Mark Consuelos, and it was just a sad moment for me for sure. All right, we're almost done. We're getting to our listener roundups. At CHONI5 on it. Best moment, Cheryl Abigail flirting with Tony. That was a really cute moment. Worst moment, Fangs coming to kiss Tony in front of Cheryl. Big dick move. WTF moment, Abigail pushing and locking up Nana Rose. Yeah, we were like, what the hell? MVP, CHONI and Jabitha. PS, controversial yet brave. PS, Barchie are kind of boring. I don't know. I'm not feeling them. So I don't know what you want to do with that information, Macy, but let's just keep moving. Best line, Jughead calling Tabitha Tabby. True.
That was very cute.
She didn't have a nickname before. Yeah. At Mackenzie Burns says, best moment, the Betty and Archie scene in the beginning in the kitchen as she tries to crush his hand, showing how playful they are. I thought that was really cute. Yeah, for sure. WTF moment, Dennis, aka TBK, lurking in Archie's house at night, and Abigail with Tony acting all suspicious. MVP, Bingo for saving his master. Call out to Bingo. LVP, Anatol the assassin. True. He was an LVP this episode. Best line, what's your weakness, Superman? What's your kryptonite? And then finally we have at Oreo Cookie D1 saying best moment, Hermione Lodge returning. Worst moment, the TBK just casually strolling into the FBI office with Glenn's ID. Do they not have security cam footage?
That was a good question.
Oh, so true. Best line, Alice and her heels. WTF moment, Abigail locking up Nana Rose. MVP, Tabitha supporting her boyfriend. Oh, and Bingo saving the day made me laugh. I'm sorry, but this was too much. Bingo kill. Oh my god. So cute.
Very true.
So good. So finally, I would like to take this time to thank our patrons of the episode, our Rewinder squad, White and Nicole, our lit rewinders, Tina Ann, Soleil, Kate, and our mommy rewinders and daddy rewinder, Becca, Sarah, Tamala, Grace, and Cliff. If you would like to join our Patreon family, check us out at patreon.com/recap_rewind. And finally, a huge thank you to our guests of the pod, Miss Macy. Thank you so much for filling in for NB.
Thank you so much for having me. I always have a blast when I'm on here.
I'm so happy, and I know that we kept you a little bit longer tonight, but I think totally that it was worth the conversation. Like I said, I love chatting with you and catching up, so I love hearing your theories, and I always have a great time with you, so thanks for coming back on.
I was so happy to come back.
All right. So everyone, make sure you guys are checking us out on all of our socials: Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. You can also find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iTunes. Like, subscribe, follow, review, and comment to stay engaged with us at Recap Rewind. Macy, where can they find you on the socials?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NoContextRVD. They're both the same now. So beautiful. That's great. Yeah.
Congrats. That's awesome. That's a good catch. Absolutely. All right. That's it, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.